Risk. We've all grown comfortable with it, to a degree. That morning ride, your midweek trail run, the climb you did last weekend. Risk is here. It's part of life. And yet, we all have our comfort zones, that level of risk we're willing to take. Yours is different than mine. Mine is different than it was several years ago. And mine is certainly different than his. Meet Parker. He takes part in a sport that has earned the badge of being the most dangerous in the world.
3, 2, 1.
Wingsuit base is so extreme that even the slightest mistake can and often will end your life. Many would call him crazy for even thinking of doing it. But is he? I'll admit it. I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I know that some of the riskier things that I do in life are the ones that bring the most joy. But jump off a cliff? Really? Like most things in life, it's not cut and dry. So, before we judge, as the saying goes, let's walk a mile. This is Beyond Adventure.
I got married on, better remember this, November 24th, 2013. Actually on a mountain next to a lake where we're gonna be on Sunday. I think our first weekend trip was actually to I'll say a prominent cliff in California where we spent the weekend. She came out and she watched the jump. She hiked out in the middle of the night to watch us land.
That was the first time I've ever actually watched him base jump, and I had tears in my eyes because I was like, oh, I just fell in love with this guy and I don't want to see him get hurt. I think that started off a relationship right there, is knowing that this is something that would be us for the rest of our lives, is him doing that, so it's really cool, yeah.
One of the things that attracted me to her is that she's pretty outdoorsy and we have a lot of similar interests, so I kind of call her my 90% girl because I don't really have to choose between her and an activity until we get like 90% of the way there. You know, we can, if it's going to Smith Rock, we can get to Smith Rock, and if I would never jump off Smith Rock, but if I did, she could go climb or do something like that.
Glad to see you weren't waiting on us. Made it here to the jump spot. It's about a 15-minute kind of rough four-wheel drive road. So we're gonna jump in his vehicle, cruise up to the top, and then about a 20-minute hike, and then we're gonna get a jump off this thing. So, pretty stoked.
I had an injury. I got hurt pretty early in my base career. I think on my 14th jump, I broke my foot. I think where I was in my progression, I was certainly impatient. You know, you kind of feel like, okay, well, I'm progressing faster than maybe a normal person, or I feel competent, or you just, you probably feel like you're more experienced than you are. I don't at all think that I did it the correct way. I think that I was learning as I was going, and I just got lucky. That something that I didn't know didn't kill me before I learned it, is the honest truth.
That is prevailing wind. Yeah, so here's kind of like the first kind of checkpoint on what the weather's doing. And if it's blowing this hard right here, then, I wouldn't jump in this, and it's just gonna be worse out there, so. What do you think, Brent?
It's no good. Yeah. This is leading right into the valley right there, so anything we're feeling here is just going, it's coming up over this ridge right here.
Well, I think it's going to be really cross at the exit.
Oh yeah. Well, it's actually probably not going to be, might not be much at the exit, but a little ways out, it's just going to be cranking.
Yeah. Which, on a crosswind in a wingsuit, is basically the worst scenario because it's pushing you over when you're basically your most vulnerable because you haven't picked up any airspeed. So strong crosswind is no bueno. You're kind of mentally prepared to maybe walk down, otherwise you make poor decisions, jump in conditions that you shouldn't. I think while it's disappointing to hike down, I'm usually proud of myself after the fact for making the hard decision to do the long, grueling hike back down the hill. So I guess now we're just kind of figuring out what our next plan is. Maybe we'll head up north and check out a different spot and see what the conditions are like there. We are on the Skykomish River, which is just across from the beautiful cliff we're going to be jumping tomorrow, Mount Bering. I expect weather to be good in the morning. Getting up there early gives you the best chance of calm winds, cool air, and I don't think visibility will be an issue, but it'd be great to have an opportunity to look around because there's some pretty awesome looking peaks around here. Got a nice early start this morning. It was a little bit breezy, but things feel like they're calming down a little bit now. Kim's gonna wait for us down at the lake. And here's the trail. It's basically steep like this for 3 hours. So we're gonna cross our fingers and hope conditions are good come jump time. I think someone who hasn't done it before wants to really peg it as it must just be pure adrenaline every time, and that's why you keep doing it. Well, I mean, come on. It turns into, I don't want to make it, it doesn't turn into like downhill skiing, but kind of, you do something and it becomes familiar to you and you add a new component that makes it more interesting. You go to the ski resort, you do a green run. You get proficient at a green one, you want to do a blue run, and that little bit of extra challenge is what makes it exciting and makes it fun. Base jumping, in my opinion, isn't much different than that. I will say that you're kind of at the mercy of your own decision making, and there's a lot of freedom in that. You jump, everything went well, you made good decisions. That piece is pretty awesome. So I don't want to give it like it's this big adrenaline rush. I mean, obviously it's fun or people wouldn't be doing it, but it's kind of the mission too, big mountain adventure. Being in the woods and being in the mountains it's really therapy for me. I'm an accountant, so I'm looking at computers, I'm talking to people and dealing with kind of some tedious minutia stuff at work, and when I come out here it's big skies, big mountains and forests and clean air and kind of quiet for the most part. So if I can tie that into my passion of jumping, I get to experience all that with a big alpine approach, several hours of hiking, you're by yourself, it's quiet. And at the end, you get the luxury of flying a wingsuit down the mountain. That makes for a pretty special day.
I love the outdoors. I think it's a part of why Parker married me in the first place. So I get a lot out of him enjoying this hobby because I myself get to go and do my hobbies at the same time. So it's a part of what we both signed on for and what kind of life we want to live.
In base jumping, the consequences of making an error are severe and quite often are death. I think, at some level everybody has to accept that to participate. And there's the psychology of it won't be me.
and a long list of people who thought I wasn't going to be them that it happened to. There are very meticulous, intelligent, conservative people that have died base jumping. So the assumption that somehow I'm different or it can't happen to me because, I mean, that's a hollow assumption now that it's been proved wrong over and over again. I don't have an answer for how do I reconcile that. I certainly still fall victim to, well, this thing happened to that person, and well, I don't do that, so I'm not subject to that risk, but that would be ignoring all the risk that I do expose myself to. In some ways, it's not just about my decision making anymore. My decision making needs to be good enough for me and good enough for my family. But I think she knows what she means to me, and she knows what life means to me, and I think she trusts that I make the best decisions I can.
Seeing him actually exit is this really just surreal feeling that I'm watching the person I love jump off a cliff. If I overthink it, then it does. That would get to me if I let my mind wander too much. This is a part of him, yeah, and something he loves doing. I never take that away from him in a zillion years. Sometimes I've thought about it, like, what would you do if I told you can't base jump anymore? But I would never go that path with him. It'd be like taking a piece of him away. So I have to be cool with it. I do, yeah.
This year in particular has been a rough year in the sport. A lot of high-profile incidents have happened. Maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe I've just been in the sport long enough and seen enough stuff to where it's kind of tapered my confidence back a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm above that risk or if I'm taking that extra precaution. Maybe this is a rationalization for myself, but I do try to remind myself of how fulfilling and rewarding the sport has been to me, and I see it being in other people's lives. And for all these incidents that have happened, there are 20 other awesome success stories.
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. Good boy. Good boy. Hey.